And with the great quote from Jerry, we are all Icelanders.
One take, one take, one take, one take.
Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, let us continue on with our discussion of this great series known as Twin Peaks. And we have been discussing the episodes per video, and that brings us to season 1, episode 5. And this is from writer Mark Frost and director Leslie Linka Glatter. And so let us do this as with our previous discussions. Let us talk about everything up to and including this episode 5. I don't want to focus in detail on anything beyond episode 5. I want to save that, although I know a number of people have seen the series in full. And while we might know the trajectory, I think it's fun also to discuss it episode by episode. So that brings us to this episode 5. And once again, I don't hold myself out to be in any way a Twin Peaks expert, so I know I'm going to get a number of the details wrong, but I'm coming at this as someone who has seen the series, seen the show, seen the episodes on a number of occasions, many times. And so now this project is affording me another opportunity to watch this great show, now with season 1, episode 5. And we begin with quite a ruckus on noise, and even Cooper himself is visibly disturbed, and his night's rest is disturbed by the noise that is coming, we understand, from the group of people from Iceland. And because, as we know from earlier episodes, the group from Norway, the Norwegian group, did not close the deal with regard to the real estate. And we understand, the Ghostwood development project is something of a big deal to the Horn family, Ben and Jerry. So now we have the Iceland group, and they are being entertained in the hotel, much to the chagrin and to the bother of a number of guests, most of the guests in the hotel, as Ben later informs Jerry. But Jerry is trying to court these people, and with the hopes that something of the deal will be closed. So this is a big deal. This is a very big deal, and it's a big deal, as I say, for Ben. It's a big deal for Jerry. It's a big deal for the Horn family. Although also we see in this Leland Palmer trying to make his way into the good graces of Ben Horn, but Ben is still visibly very much concerned about Leland's presence. While there might be some of that concern due to the fact that he is genuinely concerned about Leland, who, as we know, has recently experienced a great tragedy in his family with the death of Laura Palmer. While there might be room to interpret Ben's motivations, at least in part to be based on this act of sort of sincerity on the part of his colleague, we also know that Ben is visibly upset, and he doesn't want the deal to be in any way damaged or tarnished by anything that Leland might do in public that could make things very awkward. And we see the tail end of that, or the possibility of that, later on at the very end of this episode, with the gathering and the party. And with the great quote from Jerry, we are all Icelanders. And so during this occasion with the dance that Catherine Martell is trying to use in order to cover up for what otherwise could be a huge social faux pas on the part of Leland, who is, again, in the midst of this great sorrow and tragedy, trying to deal with it as best he can. And he does it with this dance, which again feels very awkward, but it is gradually, but I think successfully, covered up, such that it is made to be part of the proceedings, thanks again to Catherine Martell and Ben and others. While, of course, this again reveals the very delicate nature, the very delicate emotional balance or imbalance, as the case may be, for a lot of the characters here because of this recent tragedy of the death of Lauren Palmer, or maybe other things, other secrets that are slowly begin to emerge to the surface as we watch this great show. So there's one line of plot. There are many other lines of plot in this episode, as we know. So, for example, we have couples that are joining, but also couples that are breaking up, in a manner of speaking. So, as far as the latter is concerned, the emerging story of Norma and Ed, because of the return of Hank. And Hank tries to, again, much as with Leland and Ben, Hank is trying, at least on the surface, to try to get back into the good graces, trying to win back Norma's heart, at least on the outward surface. Inward, we're not quite sure what Hank's motivations really are, and indeed, there is a sense of the undercurrent of the sinister and maybe even villainous. We see that a little bit when we understand that he overhears a bit of the conversation, or indeed most or all the conversation among Donna and James and Maddie at the diner, and he's sitting at the table next to them. But we understand at the tail end of the conversation that he has overheard what they are planning. In other words, Donna and James are asking Maddie to participate in trying to help them figure out who killed Laura Palmer. And one way they think of doing that is to have Maddie join forces with Madeline in order and ask her to search for the secret hiding place of Laura Palmer, seeing if there might be something there. Incidentally, I like this scene too, because you notice that James asks what drink she wants to have. Maddie does, and she enters, and I think she asks for a cherry Coke. He's coming right up, and he comes back and he puts the drink on the table with the straw as well, but she doesn't touch it. She doesn't touch the drink. In fact, she leaves very soon after the drink is there. They all leave, I think. So it's very curious. I wonder if she really didn't like the beverage, but oh well. Or maybe they drank it later. They returned later. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm missing that detail. But in any event, it reminds me, it's sort of the opposite of, again, I don't want to go into too much detail, but one of my favorite lines in a David Lynch film is from Mulholland Drive, the film Mulholland Drive, and it's, "Don't drink all the Coke." Here, perhaps the opposite can be true. You should say, "Drink all the Coke, Madeline, drink all the Coke." But anyway, what was I saying? Oh yes, so this whole subplot is a reminder of how Hank might have some dueling or double or hidden agendas. But in any event, he is now released from parole, or he's now released, and now he is trying to get back into quote-unquote civilized society, and also get back into the life of Norma. And this provides the very gut-wrenching conflict, which means that Norma and Ed are at a type of crisis or dilemma, and they meet, and it seems at first to be quite peaceful, but then it breaks down because Ed reveals that it's going to be very difficult for him on an emotional level to essentially split up with Nadine. And I think Norma is sort of offended by this, and so she realizes that maybe it is very difficult, and why are she begins to question, why is it that they are trying to make other people happy while making themselves miserable at the same time. But Ed doesn't seem to have a response to that, which is to her satisfaction. So there is a tendency for them to maybe break up, or at the very least, she says, maybe we shouldn't talk for a while. So we're not quite sure what that means, if this is a temporary or permanent type of breakup on the part of Norma and Ed, but we shall see. We shall see. And so that is one example of a couple temporarily or permanently breaking up. But now we have other couples that seem to be coming together, or maybe reinforcing their union. For example, Shelley and Bobby. And so we see them reinforce their love and affection for each other, and also at the expense of Leo. And while Leo's away, the two of them will play, and they sort of play act, making fun of Leo and getting the edge over Leo. And also there's the play acting with the gun, the pistol. So this is now becoming something that's emerged prior to this episode, but now it's getting even more prominence. And as we know from the follow through of this episode, we see that the pistol is not only a prop that is for play acting between the two of them, it actually comes into play in a very dangerous way, because Leo comes home, and Leo is again very violent and very threatening, but Shelley will not have it, and so she threatens him with the gun, and then we see and hear the gunshot and the gun being fired. We're not quite sure what the aftermath is at this point, but we see that the gun has indeed been fired. And so there is a very sudden and quite potentially catastrophic event that has occurred in the Johnson household. So this is, again, another follow through, but it is related to the whole conceit or concept of couples breaking apart and also couples coming together. And so we see perhaps in this love triangle of Shelley, Bobby, and Leo, both things happening at once. One couple essentially disintegrating while another couple coming together or reinforcing their bond with each other. So it's a very fascinating concept. Duality come to life in this way, fruition. As we know, Twin Peaks is all about duality. I mean, it's in the title, Twin Peaks, twin, two, duo. So in any event, really fascinating, riveting stuff. It's drama, intensity, soap opera, a la Invitation to Love and other things. So anyway, there's that plot line going through. And we also have the plot line I mentioned, Donna and James and Madeline. So we have the three of them kind of coming together. Madeline, of course, has a very, very similar look to Laura Palmer herself. And while they're the glasses and the hair color, they do have a similar look. And so it's almost like there's a close connection between Laura and Madeline on the one hand and how she interacts with James and Donna. And so here we have this idea, James and Donna having come together in a sense because of the absence / presence of Laura Palmer. So as I say, Laura Palmer is sort of that existential or metaphorical hole in the donut. And so it becomes the whole crux upon which the existence of the Donna-James relationship comes into being. But at the same time, they seem to not be able to escape the almost specter, if you will, of Laura Palmer. And so it almost hangs over them. And so slowly they begin to realize that they need to find out the root cause of what happened to Laura. And to do this, they try to work with Madeline, or they ask Madeline to help them. But it's an interesting detail that Madeline does look very much like Laura Palmer. So we'll see how that plays into the plot, if at all. Speaking of which, Donna and James, again, about this whole conceit about couples coming together, they meet at the gazebo a little bit later. And James reveals a little bit of the truth, quite immediately, in fact. They meet and suddenly he tells her this backstory about what his parents, about what the situation involving his parents, his father and his mother, and how they sort of separated or split, or he ran off, and then the mother is, he describes her as being a writer who's also promiscuous, and so it seems that he is very saddened by this. It's something that has affected him emotionally, but he also wants to reveal this, according to him, to Donna, because, as he says, he doesn't want any secrets between them. So this is a sort of act of sincerity on the part of James, and it's also something that Donna seems, on the surface anyway, to be very welcome to. So it brings them closer together. But we shall see, as I say, if and how at all the Donna-James dynamic is tested over the course of this series. Overall, it seems to be quite there indeed, in a manner of speaking. So, but that's one element of the couples coming together. So many other things going on. So I mentioned Shelley and Bobby. We should also mention too the dynamic of the Briggs family, and Bobby, and in particular, the parents, the mother and father, but in particular the father-son relationship, Major Briggs and Bobby. And this is it's coming to the fore in a lot of the things that we've seen so far in the series. But for example, in this episode, Dr. Jacoby, who is the psychiatrist, and also we see that he is trying to maybe counsel or help or aid the Briggs family, both as a group, although we see a lot of tension appear almost immediately, or indeed immediately, the tension between the generations, parents and children, especially the father and son, this idea that he is a military man, Major Briggs, and so Bobby seems to be addressing or attacking that in terms of the killing that he has done in the performance of his military duties, or something to that effect. But uh, we are reminded that Bobby too has been, or it's been said that maybe he is not a stranger to inflicting his own forms of violence. At least that's what we have heard, rumors, etc. Now, whether that's true or not, we shall have to wait and see. But in any event, this further dissection and examination of the psychologies of the family unit is very much a part of the heart and soul and the lifeblood of Twin Peaks, and it gains even further fuel when we have the Dr. Jacoby Bobby scene together. And Dr. Jacoby, as echoed from a previous episode, talks about Laura having secrets and Laura being, this. Someone whose secrets they couldn't reveal themselves, and almost to the point where Laura was manipulating people and taking advantage of people. And so Bob and Dr. Jacoby suggests this, that maybe Bobby himself felt manipulated and taken advantage of by Laura because of a type of self-destructive streak that Laura might have felt upon herself. And that in turn extended to how she was treating others, including Bobby. And we see Bobby visibly shaken and visibly emotionally upset by this. And so this suggests that maybe there is not just a kernel of truth to this, but maybe a large dose of truth to what Dr. Jacoby is suggesting in this session with Bobby, one-on-one session with Bobby. So there is a lot. Bobby is becoming this very fascinating, multi-dimensional character. He is not, I think it was very tempting at the start of the series to look at Bobby as a villain or a potential villain, but I think while there are definite negative and almost anti-heroic and quite despicable, or potentially anyway despicable aspects to Bobby's character, there are aspects too that are very earnest and very direct, and also very honest in that Bobby way, in that aggressive Bobby way. Again, he and many others are turning out to be such fascinating characters in this world of Twin Peaks. That's not all too, because then we, speaking of, say, the murder of Laura Palmer, we also have, of course, the investigation aspect. The authorities continuing their investigation. So we understand from the previous episode, this involved Jacques Renault, Jacques Renault's living space. And so now there's more investigation. There was this idea about the blood on the shirt and whose blood it could be, and the assumption by Cooper, which is later possibly confirmed by the confirmation of the blood type by Doc Hayward, who is just Doc Hayward is basically he can do everything. He's so multi-talented. Doc Hayward. Is there anything Doc Hayward can't do? I mean, it's amazing. But in any event, he is also here investigating the crime scene, or helping them investigate the crime scene, and that also includes the blood type identification. And also includes the it also see Cooper and Truman finding, or Truman helping Cooper find the Flesh World magazine. So remember, Flesh World, this pornographic magazine, seems to be also part of the Twin Peaks milieu. And also we see how this is where we have ads put into the magazine. And that's where the connection is between Ronette and Laura. That's we find at the start of the series, and also Leo Johnson, and also now Jacques Renault. So what does this mean? Is this also some kind of network that is going on in the underbelly of Twin Peaks, much like the drug network that we also find exists in Twin Peaks as well, which also Leo Johnson is, we understand, possibly directly connected with, as well as possibly Jacques Renault. But so we have that element returning to the fore. And then also with the investigation aspect to it, we also have the woods and the cabin, and trying to find one cabin or another cabin. And along the way, we have we have Hawk, Andy, and we have, of course, the investigation, Hawk, Andy, Truman, and Dale Cooper, yes. And also we have the wonderful types of investigation that goes through the woods. And we also have the meeting, Margaret, the log lady and the log. And so we understand too that the log saw something, and as interpreted by Margaret, We understand that this meant that maybe there was, a number of figures that night and screaming. And so this may have some direct bearing on the night that Laura died. And was it two men and two girls, and then also screaming? So whether this has any direct bearing on what's actually happened to Laura on the night of her murder, and perhaps there's two, so maybe this is Renette, or others. We're not sure, and so this becomes maybe a key detail or potential key detail. And so we also understand that the log has some kind of a connection or consciousness of some sort, or at least that's the notion or what's hinted at. And so maybe we should also take a cue from this and understand that there might be some elements of consciousness within the landscape of nature itself. So there's the log, there are the trees. Douglas firs are mentioned, of course, from the very outset by Cooper, but maybe there is something in the trees as well. Something about the nighttime, into the night, which is also a key phrase that'll come up just a little bit later. Also, owls, birds. We saw a little bit of the owls and the birds in a previous episode with Donna and James alone in the woods at night, trying to discover the hiding place of the locket. And now we have more allusions and references to owls. What does this mean in the context of the overall mystery? Who knows? We shall see. So nature, elements of nature, woods, trees, birds, wildlife. This is very key. Birds too come into play as well, because as they investigate further into the woods, into the night, we hear the song being sung, and so this is a very important type of gathering. And we have Dale Cooper and others, including Doc Hayward, by the way, who seems to be almost like deputized, I think. I mean, there's a lot to be said about deputizing regular citizens, and like the Bookhouse Boys and others. And now Doc Hayward seems to be part of the investigation into the woods as they hear the song from the record player they find out later. Lots of record players in the world of Twin Peaks as well. Remember Leland Palmer and his record player in his house an episode or so ago. And now they go into this, they discover this cabin, and they discover many clues there. And so this adds to the deepening of the mystery, and the deepening of the intense connection between the clues, the mystery, the crime, and the woods, and the history. So very, very, and also there is this is the link, or one of the links to the dream that Cooper had. There's always music in the air, and that's what he says. And also there's the link to the poker chip, which then reminds us to the link of One-Eyed Jacks, and Waldo, the bird, of course. So there's connections with wildlife and nature and animals, the bird, who's may be very, very much a key witness, perhaps, to what happened on the night, on this very terrible and tragic night. But we shall see as this goes on. And speaking of connections and bringing together of couples, I forgot to mention when we were talking about Ben Horne and the Great Northern, there's also the in the shadows emerging in the office there, Josie. Wow, so there's the connection between Josie and Ben Horne. So wow, this is a big surprise, right? And so all the while we thought that Ben was conspiring with Catherine in order to get at Josie. Now, we're not sure what Catherine knows. Maybe she doesn't know anything. But there's, of course, the tension that already exists between Catherine and Ben in this episode, when Catherine confronts Ben about the poker chip, the One-Eyed Jacks chips that she found, or that fell out of his pocket during their sexual liaison at the motel. And so she confronts him, but then they also sort of reconcile very quickly. So she thinks that they are together and they're going to conspire against Josie in the mill. But we also understand that Ben is also conspiring with Josie. Now, this is something that, again, hidden agendas and betrayals and secrecy and the duplicitous nature. So Ben Horne is also very complex. He's very two-faced, at least, maybe more as the show progresses. But this is also a very fascinating turn. And also, we have to begin to wonder about Josie. Where does she fall in the whole calculus of to put it in very fundamental terms, in the calculus of good and evil, heroes and villains in Twin Peaks. It might be more complex than meets the eye, and it might be made even more complex when we are reminded of the romantic relationship that currently exists between Josie and Sheriff Truman. So it's all falling into place in a very fascinating way indeed. And two, we should mention that we mentioned couples coming together. There might be something of the potential of another union of sorts. We're not sure, because this is the cliffhanger, is it not? Audrey, we also know, as part of the story, and she's trying to figure out in her own way what happened, and one of the ways is trying to get into Horne's department store and to start immediately at the perfume counter, and what that means in a very interesting way. She asserts herself quite suddenly and quite surprisingly, but also in a very Audrey way, because we know that she is very capable and very confident, and she knows how to manipulate things to her advantage, and we see that when she's trying to get to the perfume counter position. But also we see her being very vulnerable and very upset at the state of things at this reception party towards the end there. We also see her witnessing through a secret corridor the brief interaction between her father, Ben, and Catherine Martell. So that also, I'm not sure how that plays into her emotional state, but we know that she seems very vulnerable. She seems very upset, to the point that she goes to Cooper's room. And Cooper goes into his room, and he finds Audrey undressed and in his bed. And so we wonder what this will lead to, if anything, as the episode ends. So wow. So a lot of stuff that goes on here. A lot of things. Again, more dominoes. Again, to borrow an image from Hank, more dominoes. I wonder if it's a double three. We'll see. But more dominoes being set up, maybe to be pushed over or fall in future episodes. We shall see. But there's a lot of things that are hinted at. A lot of clues that are also layered on, a lot of reminders of things in the past, and also maybe some subtle seeds that are being planted now that might grow into something later on, might grow into trees or something like that, might grow into Douglas fir or sycamore or whatever the case may be. But a lot definitely to chew on. That's for sure in this episode, much like a nice slice of cherry pie at the Double R. So with that, my friends, that is episode 5 in a nutshell. And so we shall continue going on through this wonderful series. And won't you join me? I'd love to have your company, because once again, to borrow the great line from Jerry Horne, we are all Icelanders. So thank you so much, my dear friends, and until we see each other at the next one, I hope that this video finds you well, and that you continue to watch a lot of great Twin Peaks. Thank you so much, and cheers.